So yes, welcome to the March meeting. Thank you all for coming. And yeah, a bit later on, David's going to give us a demo that I think lots of people are quite excited about, me included. So that should look good. But before we do that, let's have a quick look at what questions we've got and what people have been doing, because I think that's one of the things this group is always quite useful for doing. So what have we got? So yes, Lillian this morning sent an email about creating tactile graphics, which is something I'm very interested in. So yeah, I every time I hear about it, it sounds more, there's kind of really interesting things going on. Yeah, well worth a read that. You said it's part of a series in your email, Lillian. What's next in the series, or don't we know yet?
I think it's always going to be a 5-parter by the time we're done. The next one has more archaeology stuff, so more 3-dimensional shapes, but thinking through, again, that idea of how disposable or how quickly can you make something tactile, because people often go straight to 3D printing, which is expensive, time consuming, etc., etc. But we work through that process of making something really quick and easy with clay, all the way to, obviously 3D printed stuff. And also, one of the series will talk about, describing complex images and some techniques, but also starting to use Gemini for describing images and things to visually impaired students, because if you ask Gemini to describe a particular picture to a visually impaired student, it's quite good. But, we're testing it.
Yeah, sounds like a series to keep our eyes on. Literally and maybe hands-on too. Okay, and then Faye's got a question. What alternatives do you have to blackboards that faculty want to use? Personally, I like a document projector. They've got an official name and my mind's gone blank. But does anyone else have any alternatives to blackboards that people actually want to use?
It's specifically our maths department who are very attached to having lots of blackboards and say that in the discipline you have to use a blackboard. But we have actually, got a student who can't see the blackboards. So just for the contrast.
Yeah, I think a document camera works quite well for that then, because you still can. So, for example, when I'm lecturing maths, you can still kind of have that blackboard thing of lots of things on display, but it's generally bigger and you generally have a higher contrast. Does anyone else have any? You can, yeah. Once you've converted people generally quite like it, but you also have to get past the kind of cultural blackboard attachment. Luke.
Awesome, thanks, Cordelia. One of the tools that works quite well in conjunction with a visualizer is a tool called Equatio. It seems to OCR maths quite accurately. So it's more about developing a workflow rather than looking for a silver bullet. So if you have a high quality camera capturing what's being written down on whiteboards and on blackboards, then if you can provide that software where it's needed most, i.e. students with visual impairments or other requirements, then they can still interact with what a academic is used to doing. And that's something that we've tried to do quite often, is trying to make sure that we're not overloading our academic staff with new workflows, but rather trying to build on what's already existing. But I'll post a link to that bit of software on the form for you.
Thanks very much.
Charlotte, do you have something to add?
Yeah, just something I've done before is for those who have a tablet, like an iPad or any tablet, just plugging that directly into the projector. Basically, gives you a fancy whiteboard, and then you can just send your notes directly to students as well.
Yeah,
we've suggested visualizer and we've suggested tablet, but it's the surface area that wanting
Yeah.
to hang on to, if that makes sense.
You still, I think one of the things actually that might be worth that actually I've found personally as a big difference was having two visualizers. So rather than just having one visualizer, which limits you to essentially a sheet of A4 maybe, having the two visualizers doubles that and actually does make a big difference. Jim, and then yeah. Is that who's got their
Sorry,
hand
just
up?
remembering
Sorry.
to unmute myself. I just wanted to say that one of the things that I found in talking about this with people is a certain misunderstanding about what is so crucial about the blackboard. I mean, obviously, like, you know, mathematicians spend a long time learning to write beautiful blackboard bold, to write mathematics nicely. Maths proofs can be very, very long, and you know, so a big whiteboard area is important. But the really crucial thing is actually pedagogy. It's how constructive it is for a classroom full of people to discuss the construction of a proof or anything else, any other mathematical object. I do it with contingency tables when I'm teaching SPSS, for goodness sake. We construct the contingency table, and that you need to be very, very interactive. And I've had colleagues say, well, you could do that with a PowerPoint slide. And if you challenge them to do it, well, of course they can't, because it's something that's interactively created collectively. And I think that you can miss that and just think of the blackboard as being, it's just another writing surface. You need something that captures that interactivity. The other thing is that I think there are lots of tools out there that are really, really good at helping people to write mathematics. For people who are teaching mathematics, I think I have to say that's generally not the problem. Most people who are going to be wanting to create good looking and accessible mathematics in some medium, they probably know LaTeX, and that's not so much the issue. The issue is then on the distribution end. It's getting it into the students' hands in a format that's accessible for them. And I think the big barrier there for me is that people want to hang on to stuff that's immutable. They don't want to give students stuff that they can mess with. And I think the critical thing is get over that and accept that students need to mess with stuff.
Yeah, no, I very much agree with that. I also think actually there's a teaching point about how we learn maths, and we very much need to learn maths in real time. So if you do have things like going through a proof on a PowerPoint, it speeds you up, and that's really unhelpful from a learning point of view. Yeah, Jim.
Sorry, no, I'm trying to lower my hand, but technology is defeating me.
Fair enough. I just also want to address this point that I think someone's written in the on the sheet. Whiteboards can be good for contrast, but actually lots of the time I actually find blackboards have better contrast because whiteboard pens kind of fade faster than chalk does. So I think you do have to be slightly careful that you don't go kind of whiteboards definitely have better contrast, because I think quite often, having worked with lots of students, they actually sometimes prefer the blackboards because you get higher contrast, particularly as kind of term goes on and whiteboard pens die slowly. But yeah, definitely something to consider about is black and white. Was that helpful, Faye, or was there anything you want to add? Okay, cool.
No, it's
Luke.
really helpful, thanks.
Cool. Luke, what's UJA?
UJA is an alternative to Anthology Ally. So I've not looked at the tool or received a demo just yet, but I've seen a couple of people across higher education starting to talk about this tool. It's very similar in how Blackboard Ally works, whereby you upload a file and it will produce an alternative format. However, UJA also promotes that it is compatible with maths content. Now, I know they are at DigiFest, and I know that I'm at DigiFest this year. So I know I'm going to go and take a great big look at this tool and really give a bit of interrogation to see how well it really stands up to the types of content we need it to actually produce. If anyone is using UJA at the moment, I would love to hear your experiences of actually using it. If no one is, then a bit of an action for myself, I suppose. I will come back to this meeting next time around with a bit of a what's what with UJA.
Looks like you might be the far-flung explorer going to
Yes.
discover this. It sounds really interesting and definitely worth a play. So thank you for volunteering, Luke. Coding for visually impaired users. Yeah, I think this is particularly for Python. Do you have a kind of yeah.
Yeah, we've it's actually more of a computer science sort of background, but it still is kind of relevant. And we've basically got a blind student who has come in, and it's not so much the actual like Python, but just using the software he's found sort of quite challenging. So I'm in the process of developing him some guidance and some tips, predominantly just found from like random Reddits online. But I just wanted to know if anyone else had sort of any experience or tips in a similar area.
Luke?
Get rid of fancy IDEs. So I actually have an IDE that I'm about to recommend. Microsoft Studio, deep in its accessibility settings, has a feature that is supposed to make it more inclusive for people who are relying on it, interacting with it using a screen reader. I've not tested this, nor do I know of anyone who has done this or need to have done this, but I would be very open to hearing a little bit about your experience if that's what your student wants to give a go.
Yeah. I think at the moment we're recommending Visual Studio Code because that has sort of similar capacity where it has sort of this inbuilt screen reader support, except you turn it on and then the navigation completely changes with no guidance on how it changes. And it's the guidance that they actually have public is very, very vague and not very helpful. But it's definitely good to be able to sort of offer a couple of tools. So I think I'll do some testing myself and see if it's something we could offer to him as well.
That sounds good. We might come back to you in a future meeting, Rebecca, to hear about how you got on and maybe see what the rest of us could learn from that.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Konstantina, welcome back. I look forward to seeing you next week. But yes, there we go. Hayden, who I keep annoying with questions about this, working with Make It colleagues to use BookML to create HTML versions of notes. This is a very interesting thing, but I'm going to park it because we're going to talk about this a lot more in our next meeting. So I will leave that for the time being, unless anyone has any really pressing questions. Okay. Supporting learners with ADHD is interesting. I feel like that's something we talk a bit less about in this group. And then we also have Helen and Paul both working on the same thing. Yeah, maybe we should. I don't feel like we talk much about that in a kind of explicit way. Maybe that is worth discussing more. Does anyone have any comments or? Okay, and then looking forward to the LaTeX demo. Good, that's next. And the involvement with the subgroup. Steve's going to talk to us a bit later about that too. So excellent. Does anyone have anything kind of additional they want to bring up at this point, or shall we jump into the next bit? Okay, so next up is David, I think, if that's okay. He's going to give us a little demonstration. So
yeah, okay. So I'm going to demonstrate something we've been working on, accessibility in LaTeX for a few years now, but the maths in particular, we've been working on, well, since just before Christmas. So I thought I'd show where we are. Let me just put some links in the chat. Yeah, I am aware that screen share is probably about the least accessible thing I could imagine doing. So I apologize for that, but I'll try to talk as well and not assume everybody can see the screen. But I will show screen anyway, so I'll hopefully let me share my screen.
Screen list. Stop sharing.
So hopefully
Control+Shift+E.
Hopefully you can see on my screen now, or I'll not tell you. So it's a typical LaTeX document. It's 2 columns. It's got some maths. It's got table of contents. It's got some figures and some tables. And until relatively recently, if you use the PDF version of this, the accessibility was kind of atrocious. I mean, we were working to improve that. So I should say that everything I'm showing, well, yeah, I'll tell you. So the LaTeX code is all public. In fact, I'm 1 day behind. If you update your Tech Live today, you get a slightly better version, or we could just post a new version. The screen reader, I'm using NVDA 25.1, which is in alpha release. It should be released in April, I think. So that's needed for the math support. So the public NVDA doesn't pick up the math, but I'll show the math being read. But that does require. But that's the only thing that's not currently public. But I say it's in public testing. It'll be in the next release. So with a bit of luck, I can. This is the I can show you what this sounds like in NVDA. I won't play it all, but
a 2-column example. The LaTeX team, March 3rd, 20.
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
It's always a bit scary doing screen readers and screen sharing and Teams all at the same time. But okay, I will get carry on.
March 3rd, 2025. Heading Level 1 Abstract. An example document showing automatic tagging of typical contents. Heading Level 1.
I'll skip
Heading
some
Level
things
1 Contents. Link 1 Introduction 1. Link 2 Document Structures 1.
You'll see
Link
why I'm playing the
2.1
contents
Mathematics 1. Link 2.2 Lists 1.
I'll
Link
move to the
2.3
mathematics.
Figures and Tables 1. 1 Introduction. Heading Level 1.
One point is the screen reader knows these are headings. I can move to the
2
mathematics.
Document Structures. Heading Level 1. Heading Level 1 2 Document Structures. Heading Level 2 2.1 Mathematics. Let P be a prime, then n to the pth power is equal to n mod p, an aligned set of equations. 2 lines, line 1 with label 1, f of x is equal to sine of x plus cosine of x, f prime of x is equal to cosine of x minus sine of x, line 2 with label 2, g of x is equal to 2 cosine of x, g prime of x is equal to negative 2 sine of x. Matrices. The 2 by 2 matrix. Row 1, 1, 2, row 2, 3, 4, times the 2 by 2 matrix. Row 1, 1, 1, row 2, 0, 1, is equal to the 2 by 2 matrix. Row 1, 1, 3, row 2, 3, 7.
That there. So as you hopefully see, that's not too bad. I'd be interested to know what people think is the hardest part of. I mean, if you hadn't tagged this document, what would be the worst experience for the screen reader in this typical document? Obviously, there's mathematics here, there's tables, equations. But when I was working on this over Christmas, I was kind of horrified. And when I have a blind colleague in the math group, and I was moaning to him how it was like, and I started to explain what my experience was as a screen reader, and he said, "Yeah, that's." He wasn't surprised at all.
Document 1 / aligned equations.
So this is the
Heading
untagged
Level
version
2
from the same
2.2
source.
lists. Document 1 / 2. The LaTeX Team 20
So if I
abstract.
just move through,
An example document showing, including titles, sections,
I've got no headings
lists,
navigation.
citation. The tagging enables contents. Contents. Link 1 Introduction 1 Introduction 1. Link 2 Document Structures 2 Document Structures 1. Link 2.1 Mathematics 2.1 Mathematics ... 1. Link 2.2 Lists 2.2 Lists ...
I actually started with a bigger example, actually from archive, and I had like 10 minutes of dots being read to me, and the chance of ever understanding the structure of the document, it was hopeless. So all that requires is tagging the leaders to say they're an artifact and tell the screen reader not to read it. So with just trivial tagging, I mean, tagging the mathematics is more technical and interesting stuff, but it's the simple things. Telling the screen reader these are headings, telling the screen reader that it really doesn't need to be those dots. I won't play it, but the mathematics also help. I mean, it reads the matrices with the entries in the wrong order if you don't tag it, which is somewhat disorientating. But most people would have given up by then anyway, because the document's not navigable. It's just hopeless. So I just want to show
JISC Accessible Maths. Mozilla
this-
Firefox. Document.
let me just stop the
Visited
screen
link
reader
graphic
because
logo. NVDA menu.
driving me mad.
Exit X. Exit NVDA dialog.
Okay, so I'll kill the screen reader. Yeah, so this is the this is the text source of that document, and it's online. I'll put the link in the chat. So that's the whole document, and that produced the untagged one we just listened to. And there's, for people who haven't got a screen reader, I'll put YouTube links to the same thing. So to make the tag version, this is all you had to do. So this is the new LaTeX code. So the document metadata turns on all the new features. So you ask for PDF 2, not PDF 1.7. You tell it to do UA2, which is the accessibility standard that goes with 2. Test phase latest just says load any our latest LaTeX code to make this work. We used to you put a whole long list of different modules there that we like we were working on tables, working on math, but it got anyway. You've put latest, it just do the best we do, and some customization. So there's various ways of marking up the math. So this says to use associated files for those of you who know how PDF tagging works for the MathML, and a little bit about how to show the CSS, which I can actually show. So this you can actually run on this site. You can edit. You can edit this, but you can run LaTeX on the server, and it will chug away, and give me a tag PDF in a minute. There we go. So you can do various things here. In particular, the NG PDF website from Dual Labs will open the tagged PDF and tell you the internal structure, which is what the screen reader is seeing. But also for people who want HTML, not PDF, which is perfectly reasonable. Let me just turn off the So as you see, the mathematics is coming out quite well in the for those who can't. Sorry, the mathematics is showing the PDF file has the MathML version of mathematics embedded within the PDF. It's made on the fly by LaTeX. It's not running LaTeX ML or Tech for HT or anything else. The Lua LaTeX code is making a MathML that's embedded in the actual PDF file as you run LaTeX, which means if you edit your tech document, you don't need to like redo the conversions every run. The LaTeX the MathML conversion remade. So it all appears. So there's a feature about that. That's going to get fixed. So unlike those of you who looked at like Tech for HT or LaTeX ML, they're dedicated converters from LaTeX source to HTML. This is showing the PDF spec has a specified algorithm for converting from tagged PDF to HTML. So it's nothing to do with math, nothing to do with tech. So this shows how it's not perfect, but it's quite usable actually. This is just what the HTML from the tagged PDF is over here, and the HTML version. And here in the right sidebar, you see the tagging. So there's formulas, labels, and whatever. So that's the current state. So the important thing to take away really is that that's the original document. So the only thing that's in the original document that you wouldn't recognize from the 1980s really is on the images, but we've added this to standard LaTeX even if you don't turn on tagging. So like in HTML, you can't, as somebody mentioned earlier, using AI to describe an image. We don't do that on the fly. So there's no include graphics is the standard LaTeX command for including graphics, and it has width and height and various other options. But in recent years, I can't remember quite a long couple of years probably, you can also put alt, with an alt tag, just like HTML, which in standard LaTeX doesn't do anything at all. It just gets thrown away. But the syntax is there, and if you turn on tagging, that alt tag gets put into the tagging, and so that it will get read by the screen reader. But apart from that, adding an alt tag to graphics, and then here this one says alt small skull in a diamond, and this one says an image, example image A. Everything else in this document is completely standard LaTeX from whenever. And so we've really tried to make the tagging automatic. All you have to do is turn it on with so this version is using associated files, which works with Foxit screen PDF reader, and changing that AF to SE will use MathML structure elements. It's kind of technical PDF difference, but admittedly more or less by accident. It's not like they put any effort into it. Acrobat can read this. So once you've got the latest NVDA, which will say it will be in April, if you, unfortunately, Foxit can't read this one, but they promise us it will be able to by the time the NVDA comes out. So by in a couple of months, you'll be able to generate PDFs with LaTeX in this format, and they will work in Foxit, which admittedly isn't that well-known PDF reader, but they're doing a lot on accessibility. They're really pushing the boundaries of what we can do. And also it works in Acrobat, and the maths will get read. And it's, I mean, all the PDF reader has to do is to give it to the AT. So the reading is exactly the same. All the maths you just heard read in Foxit will sound exactly the same in Acrobat, because I mean neither of them's really doing it. It's Neil's MathCat and NVDA. So we're really quite hopeful that in a couple of months that will be the situation that you can generate. So NVDA is Windows only. On other platforms, the situation's more complicated, let's say. But I mean, what we hope is that when we demonstrate that this works and that you can really do this with a large corpus of LaTeX documents, it will push us to screen readers on other platforms. Not mentioning Apple by name, to make things work, because I mean this shows it does work. Anyway, I haven't really got anything other than that. I've got other bits I could demo, but take questions or money or plaudits or anything else people want to give. So.
Cool, thank you. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat. We've shown kind of how it demonstrates maths. And so Lillian's asking, will it show what it's reading in focus for those who might need it?
We tried this. Sort of no. I mean, my use of the screen reader is somewhat amateurish, because as you may guess, I don't use it. You can turn on focus in NVDA, but it only shows the focus for focusable elements. So when the reading reaches a link, a box appears around the link. But if it's just reading the maths or reading some pile of text, it just doesn't do anything. And I think that's the way it is, but it might just be that I don't understand screen readers. I mean, yeah, so the maths works as well as the normal text, but I couldn't get that to focus except for focusable elements, in the HTML sense. So, links, buttons, things like that, which is, for me, I didn't find, well, obviously, if you want to know when to click on the link, it's probably useful. But if it as a demo, just showing, having a cursor move along as it's reading, I couldn't get it to do that even for a Hello World document. So yeah. Is this using LaTeX? Yes. So most of the tagging works with PDF Tech as well. The on-the-fly conversion to MathML doesn't, because it's written in Lua. But what you can do in the PDF Tech version, so for people who don't use Tech, PDF Tech is like the most common one. LuaTeX is a modern Unicode extension. Well, not that modern these days, 10 years. If you've got the MathML from anywhere, either from LuaTeX or from Tech4HT, or you've written it yourself if you're me, you can supply a separate file to the PDF Tech version to include the MathML. but the on-the-fly one I demonstrated there on the server is LaTeX. And somebody's asking about, no, Math. I think you were thinking about Math Player, which is the plugin derived from Internet Explorer plugin. So MathCat is the latest version from Neil, who wrote Math Player, and it will be, so currently it's an add-on in 20, and it will be an add-on in 25.1, most likely 2025.2, so later in the year. MathCat will be embedded into NVDA, so you won't need to go to the add-on store and add it in. It will be built in. So MathCat, you can still use the I just scrolled off my screen, the other one whose name I forget. Yeah, so MathCat is will be just built into NVDA, and also in JAWS is also incorporating it. So Neil's written it, but it's open source and free, and he just wants people to, so JAWS and NVDA, and another one whose name I forget, some other screen reader is using it. But it's not on the like on the Macs, the standard platform screen reading doesn't currently read maths. It just, big companies are slower to move.
I think Steve has a good question, because that was all very technical, but
Sorry about
does
that.
this work retrofittingly with existing LaTeX files?
Yes,
This is the whole idea.
I'll let Frank speak. I mean, the idea is LaTeX users can put arbitrary amounts of complicated code in the middle of their documents, so it can fail. But we're hoping that, for instance, a large chunk of the 2 million documents in archive would be processable with this, just by adding something at the top. But I'll let Frank speak, because he's more politically correct than I am.
This is part of the project, really, that we want to be able to not just make new documents accessible, but essentially without real effort by users or organizations or people having a big corpus to get existing LaTeX documents become accessible, with basically just injecting a single line of front code, which is the document metadata thing. Even the tag PDF setup is more like a technical sort of thing that we are currently using while we are sort of enhancing the system and having ways to customize it. But by the end of the day, all that should be necessary with most documents, that's the goal, is to add this document metadata line and then recompile. And as David said, I mean, it is not something that you can guarantee for 30 years or 40 years of LaTeX documents. But interestingly enough, and maybe David, you can show that actually, we have on the website of the project a table with the packages that are currently already compatible. And I mean, LaTeX has something like about 5,500 add-on packages out there. And we have at the moment classified something like 1,500 of those. And out of them, we have, I think, 700 fully compatible extension packages, about 120 or so partially compatible. So in that sense, we are not where we want to be by the end of the day. But and you see in this table here also sort of a classification based on recommended packages from the LaTeX companion packages that are used. In archive.org, we have gotten the information how many documents.
This column, the column in numbers is a percentage, the percentage of currency in archive. So whether it's used in practice by a reasonable percentage of archive.
And the idea is we want to be able to have, by the end of the project, everything that is used in archive with more than 0.0.1 or something like this documents in archive using that package. In other words, any package that is used more than 100 times in the whole of archive, which is more than 2 million LaTeX documents,
should be on that list and have a check mark, hopefully. And that should give us really a very, very rich chance to get most of the existing documents out there more or less painlessly accessible by recompiling. And once we have a critical mass and we have the right kind of interfaces, we hope that new packages that come to LaTeX will automatically be sort of incentivized. No, what's the word? Their developers will take accessibility into consideration. And we're already seeing that there's currently, for example, a new sort of math package being developed, and the guy is already trying to make sure that it works with the tagging interfaces that we have provided for AMS, math, and so on. So that's kind of the sort of big goal, and I think we are on a good way here.
The table looks really helpful, actually. Luke asks a good question. Does this work with different classes of files too? Does it?
It
It's
works
the elusive
well.
Beamer.
Yeah, so commonly
not with Beamer, but
Beamer's tricky. But Joseph, who's the main Beamer and also on the LaTeX project, is a lecturer at UEA. So he's incentivized to make at least some. The internal code of Beamer is interesting and vastly complicated. So, but also it's not clear with Beamer. He's looking now at exactly that. For Beamer, you can. So it's for those who don't know, LaTeX is like PowerPoint for LaTeX. But you can make notes, handout notes, which are more like a document. So that's the first aim, to try and make at least the handouts accessible. When you've got overlays, so you've got gradual reveals and gradual fade outs, and so every PDF page is really in the Beamer file about 15 times, because when you see it incrementally appearing, what's really happening is it's a whole new page. That's the way PDF works. It doesn't really have that incremental appearance. So in the file, you've got every bit of text appears dozens of times typically in Beamer. And what does the tagging? What do you want the tagging to do? So the first aim for Beamer, which is more reasonable, is to make Beamer's notes, handouts accessible, which also doesn't work at the moment. Making an actual accessible presentation is not. I mean, in fact, Joseph's got some public discussion pages, like just asking what's it supposed to do. What would you want it to do? It can't do anything at the moment. But so that's Beamer's tricky. More immediately, the difficulty is journal classes. Journal classes usually are more or less the standard classes, but then have really complicated front matter, title, author, layout rules. And that will usually require the class maintainers to tag those up, because it's really laying out it. When you write, the author might make title and expect the title to come. What the class does is this font at this position, at this size, three centimeters down from the top of the page. So there's no structure, but hopefully once we've done a few classes, as Frank just mentioned, the maintainers of those journal classes hopefully will be pressured to, because all they have to do is put the tagging in to say this is the title, this is the end of the title, and then it's tagged as a title, and it doesn't matter what the layout is, but you can't automatically pick that up, because it's not the way LaTeX works. Is the internal structure, it just isn't there, because also maintainers have just made the layout be whatever it is. So thesis classes, journal classes will require some hand tuning by the maintainers, but hopefully once you've seen 2 or 3 it'd be obvious what to do, but they will have to do it. It's just how it is.
Excellent. This all sounds very progressive and useful. Does anyone have any further questions? I think we've gone through all the ones in the chat. Anyone else? Okay. In which case, thank you, David. And
Okay, I'll
Greg.
stop sharing.
Okay, and I guess we're moving on to Steve, if he's still here. I know he was having internet problems.
Hiding in a corner somewhere. Right, the next bit of the agenda was just to kind of report back a little bit on some work that myself and Lillian from York and Josh Lim from Bath, who I don't think's on the call today, but it has helped out obviously, and Catherine Bradley from Leeds, about some kind of framing for people who are new to this group. If you sat through any of what was just talked about by David and it was a little bit kind of confusing to you, then don't be frightful of that, because we've all come to the JISC Accessible Maths group from one route or another. Some people will have had really kind of long careers in teaching mathematics and programming using LaTeX and other kind of solutions, and will be really well versed in all of that kind of thing. Or you might have come in the kind of route that I've just ended up working as a learning technologist and then found myself supporting a faculty or a department within an institution where STEM subjects are central and accessible maths related issues have landed on your desk without really any kind of backstop or experience of what's going on. And I think I put my hand up in one of these meetings a few months ago and kind of went, I don't really know what's going on. And I found that I wasn't the only person who felt that way. So the four of us got together kind of out with the main group and had a bit of a discussion about how we might help people who are new to supporting accessible maths in their institution kind of take some first steps onto knowing what it is that they kind of want to do themselves. Now, there is in our Google site, there is a first steps page. I'm just going to dump the URL in the chat here. That's not got a lot on it at the moment, but we were kind of discussing within our mini subgroup about how we could maybe supplement the content of that over the next few weeks and months to try and make it a little bit more useful for you if you are somebody who's relatively new to the topic. And what we thought would be quite a useful thing to do is we actually recorded one of the little meetings that we had a few weeks ago, which was really quite useful. And I don't want to start another series of podcasts. I think I commented to the others that the world's already full of enough podcasts, and the last thing you need is another set of podcasts. But it was quite a useful discussion to kind of capture approaches to accessibility, what our understanding is of accessibility and accessible maths related issues, and how we might go about tackling that. So on the back of our kind of meetings out with the main group here, we decided we would come back here and report back on what we've done, and offer to do a little bit of work on that first steps page to try and kind of flesh out what it's like starting out in the world of accessible maths if you are somebody who's in a kind of learning technologist role. So I've contacted Cordelia and with a view to getting some access to mess around with that page and create some content on there that might be relevant to you, and put that recording that we made of our session in there for people if they want to watch that back. We also want to offer the four of us who are within that little subgroup kind of either sort of one-to-one or small group mentoring sessions, sort of much like we've done for ourselves within the context of that mini group, to help onboard any new learning technologists or any people who are sort of feel like they're still struggling a little bit. I'm not quite sure how we're going to get the sign-up mechanism for that sorted, Cordelia. I don't know if you had any kind of thoughts about that since we exchanged some emails, but in those little sessions we thought we would support staff to have a conversation about what it is that you feel like you do know and what you don't know about accessible maths, talk about the issues that might be facing you individually at your specific institution. We can share useful resources with them, and then we would encourage people to kind of take the step of creating almost a kind of localized resource. Lillian's got a great thing at York called a primer document that she kind of goes through all the steps that you might want to step through if you're thinking about supporting accessible maths. And we're not looking at ripping off that document, but trying to encourage people to create a localized, context sensitive version for themselves within their own institution, because the mere act of going through those steps is in itself a useful exercise to kind of frame your understanding of the topic as it goes, as you stand at the moment, and also highlight to you what areas maybe you need to think about on some of the challenging issues that are facing your local institution. And then having done that, we would then kind of meet up with folk a little bit while later and sort of ask them about their confidence level and try and sort of set up a situation where we kind of, for want of the use of a better, maybe slightly less Americanized expression, kind of buddy people through the process of becoming competent and confident at supporting accessible maths kind of stuff. It does change over time. I listened to what David was talking about a minute ago there, and I understood about probably 85 to 90% of what was said. And I was like, yes, come on, because I know if I'd gone to that equivalent presentation about 18 months ago, it just would have gone right over, and I would have no idea what was going on at all. So it is a slow kind of process, and you gradually gain skills as you go through. But we wanted to be able to set up some kind of support mechanism environment for other people if they were interested in taking advantage of that. So that's where we got with the little subgroup. We're going to do a little bit of work on that kind of first steps page. Cordelia, I'll have a bit more of a chat with you about how we kind of get people to sign up for this sort of stuff if they're interested in it. But it was just it was an opportunity, I think, for us to offer to extend the support network within the community. And also, if we find that it's successful, we could potentially report back on it at the DIGAC conference in June. So there we go. So that's the topic.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. We're gonna, we will sit and find some time to do this. There will be a form somewhere on the website. I will probably put it in the newsletter and remind people this exists, so people can fill in a form, register their interest, and then we can pair people up or find someone to talk to. Does anyone have kind of?
We're all quite friendly. I think it's worth saying.
No, it's not people.
It's not a trap or a test or anything like that. I'm certainly very informal and kind of easygoing on people. So don't worry. It's not a difficult thing.
Yeah. Does anyone have? We do not accept payment in children. We're none of us are accepting payment. That's probably why we're here. Does anyone have any other questions about that or that first page, actually, that first steps page, when I have 5 minutes, which will be soon, hopefully, I was also planning on rewriting some of that more from a teaching perspective and from a student support, not a learning technologist, but a kind of actually helping directly student support point of view. So that first page might get kind of who are you split off a bit more, because I think one of the things we've seen is we're quite a broad group, and who we are and what we're doing can sometimes be quite, we're coming at this from different perspectives. Any other comments on that? Which does link us quite nicely to the next, the final thing I want to talk about then, which is the survey we've got going. If you've not filled it in, please do. It's really interesting seeing the comments come in. I'm going to go through and work it all, but it's interesting seeing, just without even reading the comments, seeing how we're all coming from very different places. We all thinking about this in different ways. We're all doing different things. One of the things I will note and just show you my little map I've made. There's no one in the Midlands. We're a bit lacking in the Midlands. So unless people are working in the Midlands and they want to start receiving emails from me going, "Hi, university, do you have anyone working on accessible maths?" Please do fill it in. It'd be good to have a kind of good national picture of what's going on. And at the moment we're getting a very, well, Scotland's well represented. Yorkshire's not doing too badly. The Southwest's not too bad. I'm a bit surprised we only have one person from London. You're in the white part of the map. Yes, there are some people. I'm sorry, this is the map I could easily put data into. There are people who've responded who are in Ireland or Germany or one in Portugal. So there are more people that exist. Okay, so that's the my little, please fill in my survey. It's really useful. I will report back. I'm going to leave it open probably until the next meeting, and then I'll close it and report back after that. Does anyone else, we've got 5 minutes left, does anyone else have anything else they want to discuss, ask, mention, comment? Yes, Kyron.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry for the strange comment. There was a sorry. There was a presentation on Talmo in
January?
I'm going to say January. Yeah. So it'll be recorded and online, but it was kind of similar in the sense to the presentation earlier. It was really good about using HTML and getting your lecture notes to be, as accessible as possible. So I'm not sure if the recording is online yet. Maybe I can just search now when I shut up.
So the recording from Talmo, I think, is online. I think I did. So Charlotte gave that along with Vincenzo. Actually, in our next meeting, hopefully Vincenzo is going to come, and I might bully Charlotte into talking too.
Okay.
And so we should be getting a kind of another iteration of that next time.
Okay,
but yeah,
brilliant.
again, that's another really useful tool in our pockets. Excellent. Okay, if everyone's happy, then have 4 minutes of your lunch. I guess we can finish a bit early. Yeah, thank you. I think we're aiming to have the next meeting possibly at the end of April, beginning of May, in that weird post-Easter period. So more details will be sent out once we've got time. But yeah, thank you all for coming today, and yeah, see you all soon.
Wow.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.